Lens review time. 60mm. Hello guys, what I want to talk about today is the Nikon 60mm D series Micro Nikkor lens. I've had this lens for about 2 weeks now. I've used it on the Sony. I've used it a little bit on the Nikon. I'm slowly moving away from the Nikon camera bodies, let's be honest with you. It autofocuses pretty well, even at macro distances in good light. I did some test shots in the sun and it found focus on the focus point right away. It's a half a turn of this focus knob. Almost. It ain't quite a full half turn. Let's see here. It goes from what appears to be right at 1 foot, and that's from the image plane. That's not from the front of the lens out. If you look on your camera body, it'll be marked. You'll see this little marker right here. And what that is, that's the image sensor. That's the plane of the sensor. So that when that says 1 foot, it's 1 foot from there, not 1 foot from the end of the lens. So from here out, you know, it focuses to right there. Well, if I put it on the camera, and we rack the focus all the way out. All right, now that I've racked the focus out, you can see there's a good 6 inches taken up with the camera and lens to the focal plane. Pretty much good solid 6 inches. So you're only about 6 inches away from your subject at your front minimum focus distance. To be honest with you, I always shoot my macro photography with manual focus, and you know, I compose, and a lot of times I'll move the camera back and forth until what I want is actually sharp in the image, and then I'll fire my frame. And you can get really close to stuff by doing this. I've got some really cool little pictures of some little tiny flowers, and you know, I'm able to get right up on them and get really exquisite detail. It actually works really well as a general purpose lens as well as a macro lens. If you was going to get a universal do-it-all lens, like taking on vacation and you didn't want to take a lot of gear and you just want to get some nice good snapshots, you can do some really interesting detail shots as well as getting, you know, decent landscape shots even. This little lens right here is it's a champ. I mean, it works really well. Let me fire up the focus motor on it, turn it all back on. I mean, it's not the fastest focus in the world, as you saw, but it focused. You know, if I focus right here, and it's a little noisy. You know, you got this much sound. The D series lenses don't have focus motors on them. It's driven from the body with a little worm gear. So you've got a little mechanism in there that's being driven back and forth with a screw. I'm not going to bother with specs or size or any of that mumbo jumbo. You can get that off of any number of other websites. And what I want to do is give you my opinion of how well it works. The lens itself is fairly lightweight. There's not a lot of glass in there. It's basically the lens is only this part of the body. The rest of this is really recessed down in there really deep. I don't know if you can tell it from the video. You know, the lens is down in there, and it's because of the long range focus. I'll switch it back to manual. It's got this manual ring on it here. They press that button, allows you to move the focus ring from auto to manual. Now it's in manual mode, and I can drive it out. And you can see now what's happening is the lens telescopes out of the body as the body telescopes out. It's got a little heft to it, but it's not super heavy. In autofocus, it has a limiting switch to limit the distance that it focuses, so it doesn't spend all day hunting focus in the macro range. It'll stop at a certain point and go back out. It has a selector lock to lock it in the aperture ring, which all the D series lenses do that, so that when you're running aperture mode in the camera, it controls the aperture, and you lock this in minimum so it can open it to whichever one it needs. Manual auto focus ring, and that's all the functions it's on it. Of course, it has an external aperture ring, which is kind of cool on the Sony, but I use it to great effect. I really like this lens. It's rivaling the 28mm, let's put it that way. It's not so long that it's difficult to shoot with, and it's not so short that you have to get right up in the face of whoever you're photographing to get a decent shot of them. It's like it's just right there in the middle. It's kind of like the 50mm, you know. All right, if you want a good general purpose walk around lens, the 60mm F2.8 D series Micro Nikkor makes a great general purpose lens. I've used it for the past couple of weeks. I've taken a plethora of photos with it. It actually works really well on macro as well as just regular photography. If you was to want a general purpose walk around lens that wouldn't break the bank but had really good close focusing capability to give you, you know, if you wanted to do detail shots as well as more environmental or even, you know, portraiture, this 60mm lens does really good. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell when you want to know about the next video that drops.